We're ready to go.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're going to do a carburetor and fuel lines and whatnot on our little guy here. But before we get started, I want to talk for a minute about work area. When I do something like this, I'll do the carb and the fuel lines and the filters and the whole shooting match in, I don't know, 5 or 8, 10 minutes. And I'm never in a hurry when I do it. It's just how long it takes for me. And part of the reason it takes that long is because I try to stay as organized as possible. And if you look, this is my normal work area. And yeah, the one thing you're guaranteed is there'll always be a can of soda sitting there someplace. But before I start any project, and when I leave every project, the last thing I do is I make sure my work area looks exactly the same every time. And if you were to look around, you'll see that every single tool you need to work on an engine, well, a small engine, 1, 2-cylinder engines, is on the wall someplace or in one of the little boxes for all the little parts. And when you're working on an engine, it's kind of nice to put yourself in a position here where you pretty much start right here, and you very rarely take more than 1 or 2 steps any direction. Everything is within reach right here. So anyway, let's get to work on this little guy. Neat little motor. Don't know a whole lot about it. The only thing I do know is that it lived in the dark in a warehouse for a long time. So I'm going to do the normal and throw a carburetor on her and see if that doesn't do it. This one in particular, as I was saying, this one in particular, I've already opened it up and looked inside the cylinder, and it all looks pretty good. And she almost starts and she sputters and complains a lot. So I decided it's easier to throw a carburetor on it for the price of the carburetors nowadays than it was to spend 2 hours diagnosing it. When you're doing the gaskets, always make sure that the little holes line up. If, like in this case, the little holes don't line up, I've got the wrong gasket in my hand. If the little holes don't line up, she most certainly is not going to work correctly. Okay, this one would go on this side. And that in this case would be the front side of the carburetor. The back side actually has a rubber gasket here, but we're in the habit of always putting a gasket on anyway. So let's go ahead and do it. Now this one, the gasket that came with the carburetor, doesn't line up with the holes on the carburetor. So we're going to do a couple of quick test fits and find one that does. Because if it's not vented properly, the engine's not going to run correctly. And again, when I talk about the work surfaces having everything in the correct place, this is exactly where that comes in handy. Okay, this one will work, but I'd like to find a better fit if I can before we call that one our gasket. And don't just randomly count on the gaskets being correct when you buy them, because you'll hit a lot of cases like this, where you can see the vent hole. It's covered up. Now it's only going to show through on this one little area right here. But it is important that it does exactly that. Okay, looking around. It's okay if it has an extra hole that doesn't go anywhere, but it's important that it does have the holes that it needs. Okay, that should do it. Now we've got a gasket that'll work. So let's go ahead and toss it back on and get to work on the fuel lines. Now note that I'm putting the gaskets on the studs. That'll hold our alignment while we put it together. I usually put this on before tightening it up, because occasionally, depending on the carburetor, you won't be able to get it attached once the carburetor's on nice and tight. This one in particular doesn't mind. Now we go back and forth. And we go back and forth, only so that it doesn't seal harder on one side and put an odd air gap in the gasket on the other side. Okay, that all looks good. Let's get this out of the way and put some fuel lines on it. Okay, we're going to drain the fuel out. So let's pull the old ones out. Okay, tank looks okay. Those in with the primer bulbs. Let's grab our fuel hose container. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, in order to install the fuel line, we'll use this. Now, the little end on this, make sure that it's nice and pointy. It'll save you a whole lot of work later. So now we're going to taper the end of it. I'm going to push this through. And I'm in the habit of doing the gas line first and the return line second, but it makes no never mind at all. You can do whichever one you prefer. If you do this all the time, it's good to get in a good habit of this is how I always do it. That way, it'll cut down on mistakes later. Okay, nice and gentle. There we go. Let's pull it through. And once you get the little end sticking out like that, grab it with your pliers, because it'll pull off of this pretty easy. And just do that. And we'll leave that right there for the moment. We'll push this back through. And this will be our fuel line. So we'll guess it right about here. That looks pretty good. Now we'll take the other part and turn it into our return line. Now your return line goes into the tank, and it just dead ends into the tank. And that's for when you prime it, that's where the fuel comes back out. Because you need a full cycle in order to prime the engine correctly. So, hook you on. Let's pull you through. And there you go. Instant fuel lines. So now we're going to, oh, you know something, we're going to pull you all the way through and cut you second. Now this is our return line. And notice I'm twisting it as I go so that the return line doesn't face up. Now all it has to do is go inside the tank and nothing else. But you want to leave a little bit of slack so that in the future, if someone works on it and they have to cut the end, they won't necessarily have to replace it. Okay, now we're going to take our fuel line and carry it up just a touch and attach it. And then all we do is throw a filter on and we're done. And we'll throw some gas in this, and with a little bit of luck, she'll start. The fuel line's nice and tight. Perfect. As you can see, they're on nice and snug. Okay, let's find a filter. And again, I talk about an organized workspace. I keep all of my little parts within arm's reach, and I keep all my boxes labeled so that when I need to look for something, I don't have to search for it. And there we go. She's not going anywhere. If you're not sure which one's which, the return line will usually be closest to the primer bulb in 95% of them. The intake line, which attaches to the fuel bulb, is the one closer to the venturi on the carburetor. Or the throat of the carburetor, or whatever you like to call her. Okay, she's laying in there nicely. So let's put some fuel in it. Now, outside of pinching the fuel line when I was putting the carburetor on, this one went pretty smooth. Okay, so now she's nice and full with fuel. So let's give her a run, see if she starts. Put the gas cap back on. And this is a perfect time to check for leaks. Make sure your gas cap's on nice and tight, and hold her sideways over the bench, because your bench should not have any gas on it at this point. And if you've got any leaks at all, you'll see them. See, this one's nice and dry. So let's give her a few good primes. Now, another way to make sure your fuel lines are correct is, if you look here, you'll see the gas come up the back one and come down the front one, and you know the front one here is your return line. You set it up as your return line. If you see the gas go in the other direction, see, and there's the gas pushing back down through it. If you see the gas go in the other direction, then you want to switch your lines. And you can just switch them here and you're done. Okay, let's give her a start. Okay, I took her outside and did a quick test. Didn't like the way she sounded, so I went ahead and replaced the spark plug. The old spark plug somehow had the electrode mashed to the point where it had not even a fingernail thickness worth of clearance. So I cleaned it up, put a new plug in it, and tuned up the carburetor real quick. So now she runs like we want her to run. And note that since we finished up the job, while I was on my little break, I went ahead and cleaned up the workbench. And I can't say this enough, there's only so many tools that you use when you do this. It's a very limited amount of tools that you use every day. And so your daily tools, the ones that you know you're going to use for this, go ahead and get them all in one place. My preference is a pegboard. And like everybody, I've got a whole toolbox full of whatnot, but I know I'm going to use my spark tester every day. I know I'm going to need my safety glasses every day. Well, a few different safety glasses. Some of them have the bifocal lens at the bottom so I can look at the tiny stuff. Your star drives, your Phillipses, your flatheads, your tiny screwdrivers. You want everything in one place. That way, when you walk up to your bench to work, you're done walking. You can turn your music on. You can play with your motor. You got everything you need right here to do the job.